Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to an episode of Business Casual from Aftermarket News. I'm Emma Henderson, Managing Editor of Aftermarket News, and we have a very special guest today. With me today is Lauren McCullough. She is CEO and founder of Trommel. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we have some pretty exciting topics to discuss today. I feel like they're slightly newer to the aftermarket maybe than some other industries. So the topic really is being data-driven and also AI. And I feel like even just the word AI can kind of freak people out a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're still having that moment, right? Where I think I compare it to the early days of the internet, right? It's something that I think, have now accepted is changing the way we work. It's not new technology, right? Just like the internet wasn't in 1995, right? It's been around for a long time. It started getting invented in the 70s, or 50s really. But I really think that what we're starting to see is it's trickling into people's day-to-day life, and there's a promise of what it can do for us as individuals and what it can do for us as organizations. But there's a little bit of a learning curve we're going through right now, which I think is the case with any new wave of technology. But yeah, we're definitely on the cusp of trying to understand, what is AI and what does that mean for the aftermarket?
Yeah, and I mean, you are constantly dealing with this day in and day out. One of the things that you talked to me about was that being data-driven and how AI has helped. You specifically mentioned cleaning dirty data. So why is that something that's so important for the aftermarket?
Yeah, I think, we have a lot of, I guess, kind of resistance that we faced in technology adoption because of the migration to new systems. I think a lot of this happened when we started adopting software that was never really made for the way we do business. I hear it get talked about a lot on particularly on CRMs. It's come up really recently with us, is like there's not a single tool that's been built for the way we do business. And I don't think that's limited to any specific technology, right? Even on the cataloging side, we had to build specific systems and structures for good reasons. But to inherit those systems, we had a lot of tech debt, like it's kind of the word we usually use. And to get that information into a hygienic place that we were able to use the systems that we're seeing, be integrated into the industries, it created a lot of manual work. And it became a diminishing returns issue because of that. And so I think that what we're seeing is on the data hygiene and governance side, that not only are we seeing a lot more benefit of these systems, and so it makes that work a lot more have higher ROI, but it's also allowed to assist with it. So if we think about a tool like ChatGPT, the reason that it's able to write an email, write a blog, do whatever you want, right? Plan a trip, is because it's able to handle unstructured data across the internet and try to put it into categorical buckets. And that is just a kind of tip of the iceberg for the type of things that these not only large language models can do, but also machine learning models that can continue to iterate over time to, take this kind of giant data swamp, I think is what I've heard people say, and then turn it into something that we can actually use as useful.
Yeah, and I think even the digital age can still be just in general intimidating to people. But you and I were talking, you were saying AI is actually helping tech be more user-friendly. So even though it might seem like another step toward being more tech savvy, how can AI actually help if maybe that's something you're struggling with?
Yeah, well, I think it's changing the way we interact with information, right? In a very big way. I think that whether it's on a consumer level in what we do when we get home at night, or whether it's in our workday, there is no lack of content. There is no lack of data. But if you think about why was the machine learning model of Netflix effective? Well, or why are targeted ads on YouTube effective? Well, it's because it's not the same as you driving down the street and looking at a billboard, right? It's actually tailoring this content to what it knows about you, what these algorithms and systems know about you. And when we look at things like data analytics or even consumer purchasing behavior, right, is I go to a website and I want to, let's say on a DIY project, buy a part, maybe I tell them a little bit about myself and it can fully customize these experiences for me. And we're seeing a lot of that emerge on the commerce side. But what I like to really kind of focus my efforts on is, how does this change the way we work? And so if you're a sales rep and it was, circa, I don't know, 2024, right? And your organization said that we want to have a more data-driven strategy for how we talk to customers. The answer to that was, well, here's 50 dashboards. I hope you find what you need. That is not a very easy task to give someone who's a relationship person, right? They got in this because they like to execute and talk to people and build these relationships, but it doesn't mean they don't need that information. It was just that the interaction with that data when it's buried in, a sea of visualizations was not how they work. But what we're able to do with AI is understand exactly what would a person like this need to know. And by using AI, we can actually, with the right systems behind us, we can actually set up a structure that goes and asks those questions that they're already asking themselves. And rather than burying it 5 dashboards deep, it surfaces that information directly for them and puts it in a human digestible format, which is typically bullets. And then in many cases, it can actually take action on top of that.
So you open a program, it can actually help you find what you need instead of having to go search in a bunch of different places.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I kind of like to use the Netflix analogy a little bit, right? Is like when we like or Hulu or whatever your streaming service is, right? The reason that those tools are so effective and so sticky is because it knows us. It knows what we want to watch, it knows what we want to binge, it knows what we don't want to watch. And thinking about those same systems for business processes, I think it's not exactly how it works and function, but I think it's a kind of good analogy. And I think talk a lot, right? Is like, if my phone is my data, right? I want to everyone at my organization to see the same phone. We're all operating off the same phone, but we care about different aspects of the phone, right? I might care about these apps. I care about what's on the camera. I care about what type of case I'm using. And so by answering that question with prompting and an AI to help to contextualize that, if it knows who you are as an operator, you can log in and it's going to tell you exactly what you need to know. And at least, if nothing else, allow you to point your efforts towards those places that better use your attention rather than spending the first, 5 hours of your day figuring out what fire you have to put out.
I do definitely think the Netflix analogy is a good one because I log in and I swear it knows exactly what I'm in the mood for to watch, how long I want to sit to watch a show, how many episodes I'm willing to sit for a show. So it definitely can figure things out about you pretty easily.
That when you double click on it, right, you watch a trailer and that's like that pilot, right? That's like your insight. Okay, well, I want to continue to go into this episode. Well, now I might go into a visualization. But what if you started every Netflix episode by watching like the sixth or Netflix series by watching the 6th episode? That's kind of what BI looks like today. It's like, oh, you can't figure out what you need to know until you watch the whole series. You don't even know if you get to like it yet, right? They figured out how to do trailers and pilot episodes and algorithms that are going to predict this for us. And sometimes they know what we want more than we do. And that's the same way these systems essentially function.
It will scare me the day that my shows just automatically start playing because it knows what I'm in the mood for. So the one thing that you really said to me that stuck out was that relationships still matter, but so does technology. The aftermarket is hugely relationship driven. I think anyone who's been in this industry for even like a month or two has figured that out. So what do you mean by that? And how do you think that people who have been in the aftermarket for a while can adjust to that idea?
Well, I think that it's, first of all, not introducing fear as a bias to what's possible. I think that from a user perspective, that's a big one, right? Is I think that, and it's not anyone in the industry's fault, right? We were forced to use a lot of technology that was never made for, again, the way we work. And that's not just in the aftermarket, right? That's just like thinking about individual users. Like every analytics tool was built for analysts. And then they said, I hope everyone else can adapt. But that's not really created a lot of confidence, I think, for people on what's possible with technology. And so then they keep doing the way they work, that way they always have done. And I get it, right? Change is quite hard. And there's a opportunity risk every time you try to spend time and energy on something new. But again, with the change of the interactions of this data, we now have the opportunity to do more of the things that we want to do. And I think that that's what's important to remember, is that on the surface, right, there is a learning curve. There's a lot of research that says that in the early days of using some of these AI tools that people spend a lot of time learning them and there's low ROI, but I think that's just a learning curve, right? It's probably the same as when people started using computers, right? Yeah, the first time it took you 10 minutes to figure out how to turn it on. The next time it took you 2. The next time it just turned on, right? And it's the same way here. But if we think about the relationship side of our industry, what we're doing by not using proper systems is not actually getting the opportunity to cultivate those relationships well. So I'll just use the sales example again, because that's the one I was using. So if I'm a sales rep, what happens right now? Maybe I'm spending 30% of my time preparing for customer meetings, 30% of my time preparing for business meetings, 20% of my time taking notes, and 20% of my time taking to customers. How can you change that ratio? Because sometimes preparing for those meetings isn't just, surface some analytic about how this customer is performing. It might be, hey, we noticed that this person mentioned last year that their kid's birthday's this week, and we went ahead and suggested some products on Amazon because we know that she's turning 6. Like, it can be as simple as that, because it's taking all that information and looking for the type of things that you would already be looking for, and think about what you can do back with that time. And I think that this is especially for people that, work into, into supply chain, if they're working with repair shops, right? People as an industry, they want their vendors, they want their customers to show them how to do more business with them while we're still maintaining this trust. And I think that that's really what people sometimes miss when they start to look at this new technology, is what it actually does to double down on the things that are actually very special and unique about this space. And again, taking away the technical burdens by having a much simpler interaction.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcox Media.
I mean, that all makes sense to me, but I think the hardest part is convincing someone to change how they work day to day sometimes, because you get in that routine and it's just hard. So with that being said, what does the industry look like 2035, 2040? I know that's kind of a loaded question, especially with how quickly technology is evolving, but as someone who's more like on the forefront, what are the trends you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think that right, if I had to guess what was in the crystal ball, I guess, right? The one thing I know is that I don't know for sure. But if I had to guess, I think that one of the things we have to recognize is that whether we like it or not, the future of work is changing. And this isn't the first time, this won't be the last. And if we think about the growth curve of technology, I actually think we're just hitting our inflection point, right? We see how much has happened in 10 years and 20 years. Now start thinking about the changes that have happened since 2015 to now. Shrink that down to about 48 months. And that's the type of change we're going to see in the next 2 years. And whether or not, and a lot of this is going to come around AI, but it's also even like moving into the cloud still, like where some people need to, right? Just like the general digitization that people have is like, waiting is not really an option anymore. I think there's a balance, because you can end up down the wrong road if you don't end up with the right partners. I think there are, there are vendors out there that can be a little bit extractive. There are partners out there that don't take the time to understand your business, and that has a lot of risk. And I've talked to a lot of people who have burned $1 million on a technology project that never manifested. And so I understand where that scar tissue is coming from. However, again, back to your original question, if we're going out to 2035, we are going to be in a world where AI is inherently integrated into every part of our day, every part of our workflow. And there was someone at AutoCare Connect this year that was speaking for Yang, and he brought up a really good point. His name is John Wolpert, and he was saying, maybe there's a day where you don't just get hired as an employee, but you get hired as an employee with your agents, like your AI agents, right? Your little assistants that come on and do some, like, I'm a content manager and I already have tools that's my personal intellectual property that I've built and designed or paid someone to build and design, and I bring that with me. Maybe we're not talking about a traditional college education, but what people are doing when they get into post-secondary education is building these agents for themselves, right? Like that's very likely going to be the case. But what I think we're very far away from is where that human does not still become important. Like, we cannot eliminate humans in a lot of the tasks that we have. These tools are very good at repeating things that we've already done. They're not very good at being innovative. They're not good at complex problem solving and deductive reasoning. And so, like, I see a day in, because I think about software, right, where a category manager, a sales rep, an executive, right, they log on, maybe it's their first day of work, You tell them a little bit about who you are, just like you're onboarding for Netflix, right? Back to that example. And it just creates a user experience for you. And we're all looking at the same phone, right? The same data set. But what it's doing is it's taking the information and conveying the important parts about our job that we need to know. And then as it learns about us, you're basically just a co-pilot for the actions it's taking. And if you can conduct the orchestra more effectively than anyone else, that's how you win, right? Because your execution game is like on fire at that point. And it's getting so easy to be able to create user experiences if you have the data structured in the way you need. And then there's, again, obviously systems on the back end that are helping to make that more possible. But I do think that like what we're going to basically doing is a conductor of a bunch of AI assistants that are doing everything from washing our clothes to, closing deals to, helping to edit video. Like it's all over the map. But again, I think the common thought is that humans are going away. And I just don't think that's the case. I just think it's just like everything else, is the job to be done has changed.
So you're saying I need to be really nice to and covet my learned language models that I've been developing, basically.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be sentient, but right, like you could have, right, what if you would have had, when we did the prep call, like you could have technically had an AI avatar, right, doing that conversation, right? Figuring out what are the most important things. And again, I don't quite know what's going to stick and what's not, because I think that there is going to become a quest for a genuine human connection. And so all the things that we just talked about, the relationship side of the industry, like, hey, remembering that this person really liked your shirt last time, and so you thought it'd be funny to buy him a matching one, like that stuff has never become more important. Like making people feel human and seen. Like I see it all the time on my LinkedIn, right? People are just complaining about software vendors who have over automated their customer service because it's not doing a very good job. And they just want to talk to a person. But that person has to be highly efficient for the economics to work.
I mean, I think this is all really interesting, and we definitely went on a few more questions than I anticipated on that topic. But the other topic we wanted to touch on was being a startup. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Because it sounds like you don't really know any different world in your professional life. And as someone who definitely comes from like legacy media or something that's been very well established, in my career, what is it like, I guess, coming in and either being part of the first team that's creating something new or being the person with the vision and then making it become a reality?
Yeah, I think, it's not for the faint of heart. It's very hard. I think that building a new technology in this industry that is on the cusp of one of the biggest operational transformations in the history of a 150-year-old industry, it is not easy, right? Because sometimes I think that we might be a little before our time, right? Like we're having conversations that some folks aren't ready for. But the problem is if we don't do it, I feel like I have, what wakes me up every morning is I genuinely have the best interest of the industry in mind when we're building what we're building. And I genuinely like what makes me feel like I've been successful in 2035. It doesn't necessarily link to like how many zeros are in my bank account. It links to the fact that like I help the industry go through the hardest thing they've ever experienced. And we help to bridge that change. And that's just who I am as a person. And that kind of generally give a explicit attitude is, I think, a really important part of that, because if I didn't genuinely care about this work, I probably wouldn't do it. And I certainly wouldn't do it with pride and do it well. And so I think that that's a precondition that you have to do this work, because we spend a lot of time speccing out projects and people get cold feet. And that's very challenging because I get it. They've been burned by people. I get it. This is hard. Hard things are hard. Being the first person sometimes to do something is scary, but we have to, take advantage of those folks that we do have taking bets on us and on the industry and on this next wave of technology to tell those stories and build those use cases, because this isn't like us being successful and people adopting the projects isn't just for me. Like, did we close that deal? It's like, does the industry get the technology it deserves? And like, do we like, and as someone who believes truly that we can be the best steward of that path, I think that we'll be the best in the world at it, is that we need the right partners right now to take those bets, because we end up with a lot of, it takes a really long time to kind of sometimes close these accounts and to close these projects. But on the other side, the impact that we've seen on people who are taking those bets is indisputable.
It's really interesting. And so on this podcast, we always do, all couple episodes that have already gone out. We are doing your aftermarket 3. So I'm curious for you, especially coming from a different space than some of our previous guests in the aftermarket. What are the 3 things that really stick out to you? Moments, things that make you stay around the industry?
Yeah, I think for me, going to things like AutoCare Connect, right, was just, in our rearview mirror. That's a huge event for me, because it was one of the first kind of, I think, big coming out as our company events that we had, and being able to really meet folks in the industry. And so I see every year when we go there as the evolution of that, right? What is like, how did we grow? It always happens. I feel like it's like kind of our company's birthday, even though it's not. So that's a big one for me. I think the other one is just the ability to have a platform that's been so open to me to speak to folks about these type of topics. I feel that the industry and the community and the support that I've received is, it's been an honor, honestly, to be able to have so many opportunities. And then I think the thing too that sometimes gets left behind is like how fun this industry is. We talked last time a little bit, but a good friend of mine, Sam, and I are doing the Rebel Rally, which is an all-women's off-road race through the desert. And so when you get to do things like that, and market as a personal branding experience in the industry, and also, for our end, right, giving right to repair and the aftermarket a voice there, that's a fun place to spend your time.
Absolutely. I think you're going to have to keep us updated on how the racing is going, because now that I've heard about it, I'm super curious. I don't think I'll ever be in one of those cars racing anytime soon, but happy to watch other people's adventures.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Very cool. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone else for watching.